Welcome back to America's Commercial Real Estate Show. I am Michael Bull. Thanks for being with us. This segment is brought to you by BullRealty.com, Asset and Occupancy Solutions. Today we're talking about success. We're talking about some things that can help you be successful in whatever business or enterprise you're in. Maybe you're a developer, service provider, or an employee at a company. So my guest is Scott Amyx, and Scott is managing partner with Amyx Ventures. He's also author of the book Strive, and he's joining us on the phone today. And Scott, we sure appreciate you being with us.
It's my pleasure.
And Scott, let's talk about service providers. You know, there's a ton of people out there that work in the service industry, and a lot of our audience are architects and accountants and lawyers and brokers. And one of the title of part of the title of your book is Strive, is how doing the things most uncomfortable lead to success. So what might we want to think about as a service provider?
Well, like I was sharing earlier, is that there are some truly seismic and tectonic shifts that's happening in the context of commercial real estate and smart cities and infrastructure throughout a city. And what that means is that your clients are going to expect you to know about some of these megatrends. And they will not look to you for simply just transacting, but they're looking for trusted advice. So in other words, they want to be able to rationalize, how should I, think about my real estate portfolio or my next project. And it's important, it's imperative that you have some working knowledge enough to be able to provide that guidance, or just even able to have a meaningful conversation around smart cities, smart buildings, Internet of Things, data analytics, AI as an example. Not to mention, whether it's purely for marketing purposes or we think that actually it's more sustainable, is at some point even the transactions are going to switch over from fiat currency to cryptocurrency, as we're seeing. So your clients are going to ask, should we allow for exchange or purchases or sales to take place using cryptocurrencies or Ethereum or whatnot? And it's important that you're knowledgeable to be able to speak about it. Others will say, well, how do you manage the volatility of that? Should we make transactions based on those new currencies that could be subject to significant swings? And again, I think, the book Strive, what it's telling you is that it's very easy for us to default to our comfortable habits. We're trained maybe in a certain particular way of selling or painting a particular vision. And I think it's imperative that as a service provider, that you really think hard about doing the things that's most uncomfortable, if it means being perceived as a trusted advisor. Now, why is that important? Because there are many other competing service providers, and they want to take a piece of the pie. And if you're not able to add that significant value in the form of knowledge and value-added skills, then somebody else is going to take your game. So it's imperative that you stay on top of your game, even if it's uncomfortable. And even some of these topics are something that you feel very uncomfortable and it's unfamiliar to you, you still do it anyways. The example I like to give is Hidden Figures, the movie, where these human secretaries or computers were about to be replaced by IBM mainframes. Now, most humans, of course, we naturally kind of resist and we get nervous about that, but the supervisor from that movie, what she did was she actually took the initiative, went to the library to learn that programming language. Not only did she find that she was not displaced, but she was able to transfer that knowledge to her colleagues, coworkers. And then they ended up working with machines. And that's the key, is that as these buildings and properties and infrastructure generate data and intelligence, your clients are going to expect you to know, what should I do with all this new data? How should we use this data to improve our operations, our OpEx, or occupancy and cash flow?
Yeah, that's a very good point. There's a lot more information out there about what are we going to do with it. And if we're just order takers, then we're not adding any value. We really need to be advisors and help them understand how to use these things. It's interesting, a lot of times we'll talk about cap rates on our show, and then someone will talk to me and say, hey Michael, you said average cap rates were 6%. I'm going to sell mine for 6%. Well, maybe theirs is worth 5 cap, or maybe it's worth an 8 cap. And that's just an easy way to look at information. And I think it's right. I think you're right. We really have to be advisors, or things like technology are going to take our jobs.
Well, I think, if I could use the analogy of ERP. So if you think about the Oracle, the SAP, kind of the large traditional players, one of the biggest challenges they had was switching over from on-site installation or implementation to cloud, as an example. And the reason that was very difficult for the sales force was that it had a direct impact to their compensation scheme and the kinds of potential for immediacy versus kind of a long-term incremental payout. The reason I bring that up is more and more things are moving to more of a as a service. So, for example, if you're in the area of warehousing is becoming highly automated. So in the next few weeks, I'm going to be talking about the future of collaborative, decentralized, intelligent robots. Well, warehouses today already, but they're going to become even more, where literally we're going to start to see less and less people working in warehouses, and machines are going to be completely sorting, moving, storing, and collating, and packaging, and shipping, just managing the entire fulfillment process. So that's an example of the kind of change that's underway. And I think, if we don't think about, the way we work, how we get compensated, we're going to find ourselves very surprised. Coming back to the robot example is that because one of the initial barriers to adopting robotics in a warehouse or manufacturing has to do with the initial CapEx, or the investment cost of setting up robots. But what they're doing is they're moving over to a robot as a service model. So what that means is you don't get the bump up if you're a salesperson. You don't have to get the initial lump sum payment from that sale of robots, but you're going to get smaller pieces of that revenue over time. That's the kind of model that we can expect more and more within real estate. And it's important that you really think about your entire business model and how you fit into that business model as we move from service-oriented architecture.
Yeah, very good point. And you bring up the buildings and the facilities, and I think that's something interesting to talk about, because the Internet of things are changing so fast with the way we work and do business. And you think about commercial buildings, office buildings, shopping centers, warehouses, there's always a functional obsolescence of the older buildings, and there's a lifespan of these buildings that we've come to expect over time. But might the functional obsolescence of some of these buildings change faster? As technology is changing so fast, Scott, do we know what we're really going to have 10 years from now? Do we know if maybe a building that is 50 years old now and has some functional obsolescence, warehouse, for example, ceilings too low, not enough outdoor space, or what have you, might functional obsolescence happen faster as things the rapid change kind of continues here?
It is. And one of the things that's very interesting, this is part of the reason that I'm sharing this on your show, is that it used to be that some of these technologies or changes were fairly slow. It took over the course of maybe 20 years, if you think about PCs or mobile. But more and more, we're starting to see the convergence of these technologies, whether it's AI, blockchain, AR, VR, mixed reality. And the convergence is happening so fast that the cycles of these innovations is becoming almost vertical, too rapid. So that is a big disconnect, which is that when you get into a tangible physical place like a real estate property asset, is that they tend to have a much longer lifespan, but the use and the functions within it is going to change rapidly. And it's important that you need to think about these aspects and allow for the physical asset to be as flexible as much as possible. So let me transition to talk about employees, just to give you a little bit more context. Mm-hmm. One of the things that Microsoft has been working on is most of us we use laptops and workstations and Microsoft Suite, correct? Mm-hmm. Well, they are already working on commercializing HoloLens on a large scale. HoloLens is their augmented reality set of glasses. Why is that important? Because the employees of the near future, and this is not 10 years, we're talking immediacy to within the next few years, massive adoption, where workers are going to be able to put on these AR glasses. They can see reality, but that reality gets overlaid with screens and information. So all the information that I used to have in front of my laptop, I can literally just cast it out virtually. So that means that I don't need to necessarily sit in a cubicle or an office setting anymore. I can collaborate, I can work anywhere. And I don't want to get convoluted, but there are also virtual reality and virtual avatars that's also coming to play, where even if people are in remote locations, you could feel as if we're collaborating in the same physical space. The point of this is that for employees, the way we work and the space in which we work is going to change dramatically. And in many cases, because of other trends such as autonomous vehicles, freelance, and variable labor force, that more and more people are going to be working away from traditional physical offices and spaces. And what does that mean? And how can developers, service providers add value to these physical assets when people are starting to find that they can actually do the work outside, even public spaces, in their cars, at home, and wherever they are? That's a game changer.
Yeah, and it's all changing so fast. It's pretty incredible, and some people might be uncomfortable with it. So how do we become more comfortable with it, Scott? How do we embrace all the changes in technology and the way we're doing business?
Well, one thing that's very important is when I present some of these things, and these are not, like I said, 10 or 20 years out, these are happening today, and it's just a matter of market share and increase in scale that's going to be happening in the next few years, is that it's very common to hear people whisper or murmur under their breath that I hope some of these things never happen, or I hope these things happen after I retire, or in some cases, I hope these things happen before when I die. That is not the right mindset. The reason I wrote the book Strive is to help people understand that at the end of the day, it's not about technology or the business model changes, but it's about the individual, all of us. If we are not willing to reset our mindset, we're going to find ourselves displaced or marginalized, or just, our value is not going to be the same. The way we've been working the last 30, 40 years is not going to be necessarily as valid or relevant or helpful moving forward. So the book talks about a methodology called Strive. And let me just go through that very briefly, which is S in Strive stands for setting a goal. And it's about looking not just at your next commission check or that next transaction, but really looking at holistically. So in the book Good to Great, Jim Collins talks about level 5 leadership. People want to work with you in whatever capacity if they perceive you that you're a leader that have greater purpose than just themselves. So it's important that you distinctively set yourself apart from the competition, and that you're looking at it from the bigger picture. And it's important that you have that guiding light for the rest of your life. And it's not just simply about, like I said, money and transactions and fame and glory. It's got to be deeper. Number 2, T in Strive stands for think about how to get there and plan for success. Now, there's nothing worse than hoping that these things don't happen or hoping that you'll still survive and be relevant. The way to realize success and continue success is to make sure that you're executing, right? So it's breaking down your longer-term goals into decades, monthly, weekly, and then on a daily basis, executing, small and big, to get you closer to that long-term vision and goal that you have. Number 3 is R in Strive, which means risk. Embrace it. And this is perhaps, the hardest for most of us, because you know what you have to do, but it scares you. Meaning you rather turn on that TV and watch that show rather than pick up a magazine or a book and learn about AI or data analytics or smart buildings. Right? Or maybe you're afraid to speak on stage, or maybe you're afraid to change a career, or maybe you're afraid to make a new type of investment into a particular asset. Whatever that hard thing is for you specifically, that's what you have to work on. That's your first step. And it's only when you stretch yourself that you begin to make huge gains. Number 4 is I in strive. I stands for insight, meaning when you start to exercise the muscle of uncomfortable change, one of the most important things is self-awareness, meaning the only way you're going to know if you're progressing in the right direction is if you continually self-examine, including failures. If you took a small step or you risked something and it didn't go quite well than you wanted, but yet you have to pause to gather insights about that particular experience and about you. And figure out what you've learned from taking those risks and continually tweak your approach so that you're more successful the next time around. Number 5 is V in strive. V stands for verify progress. You got to know if you're going in the right direction. Most of us, we use GPS or Waze when we're driving to help us verify that we're going in the right direction. In other words, you have to have a progress meter that's quantifiable, that's tangible, and it demonstrates that, in fact, you are incrementally moving towards that ultimate goal. And lastly, number 6 is E in strive, which stands for enhance yourself, mentally and physically. That journey to success, as most of us know, has to be holistic. I think it's not just about acquiring new knowledge or expertise. In addition to sharpening your mind, you have to consider your physical, emotional, and spiritual needs, right? I mean, what's the point of becoming a millionaire or picking up another $1 million check if it came at the loss of your health and you need that surgery, or now you're susceptible because you have cancer, or that relationship is damaged because you just weren't around? So, for example, one of the things I do is I start each morning with the Bible. I get into the Word to make sure my faith is strong, and then I exercise, then I meditate. So when I sit down to work, my mind is clear, I'm productive. When I interact with people, I'm at my best. So we've got to think holistic. We can't slave our way into success and neglect our body, relationships, or emotional spiritual needs. So my call to action in the book is this: regardless how you define success, most of us want more out of life, right?
Yeah.
But if we're spinning in the same circle, doing the same thing, expecting different results, that's just madness.
Right.
So I challenge all of you that are listening that the way to realize success, and it is actually available to everyone, is to do the things that's most uncomfortable for you right now. Okay? And to get started in your journey, I want to give you something helpful. I want to be able to give you my Strive VIP sneak preview of chapters 1 and 2. And that information is going to be available on the website. So, again, I encourage you to go out there and achieve incredible success. It's available to you.
That's great. And the website is scottamyx.com, and that's AMYX. And Ms. Scott, great information. Thank you for joining us. Very enlightening.
Thank you very much, Michael.
And stay with us. We'll have more. And Scott mentioned there, set yourself apart. How can you set yourself apart? Well, think our next segment, we're going to talk about setting yourself apart as a broker. He also said verify. So how do you know if you're doing the right thing? So we're going to talk about some things to help brokers and other service providers and give you a tool that you can also verify yourself and see if you are on the right track. So stay with us. I'm Michael Bull. This is America's Commercial Real Estate Show.